just wow, man. I really don't know how to describe this episode of Mob Psycho today. Besides just absolutely incredible and really emotional, actually. I have to be honest about that. I teared up, honestly, during a scene in this episode. I can't believe that actually just happened and the way it happened. That's insane. Absolutely insane. Dimple is a certified G. We gotta get that out the way right now. Dimple is he... I want to talk about it so much, but not yet. Alright, enough. We'll get into it right now. I normally talk about the episode first. We're getting into it right away. I have to talk about this episode. So let's get into it and talk about Mob Psycho 100, Season 3, Episode 6 today, because it was incredible. Our episode literally begins where our last one left off, with Mob going 100%. And we see the perspective of everyone who he's talked to about his shirt recently, and how no one is being honest with him. Not a single person is being honest. They're all trying to be nice and spare his feelings. But Dimple, our boy Dimple, starts roasting the shit out of Mob. Literally saying stuff like, "It's so lame, I'm starting to worry about you. Just looking at it makes me uneasy." And upon hearing Dimple say all this, Mob releases the last bit of his psychic energy. And I mean the last bit. He has none left. He is completely empty. And Dimple here says it himself, like, "I can't feel any power from Shigeo." He's completely empty and defenseless right now. As he explains that just now, he released all of his energy like a balloon with holes in it. He let it all out at once. As he asks Mob, like, "Did you really just let go of all your power just like that? And you did it on purpose? For what? Are you saying you're no longer going to try to persuade me? I even transformed into God Dimple for this, damn it." And as he approaches Mob, he says, "What are you playing at? Didn't you say that you don't acknowledge me? I have the power of a god. How are you going to face me without any powers?" As he literally points his finger at Mob and says, "You're facing a tough enemy of unprecedented strength. I could finish you with a poke of my finger right now." And Mob tells him, "You're right. But you won't do that, will you? When talking with you, having powers would only get in the way. Now we can actually talk." As Mob approaches him, and that finger he pointed at him with the blade dissipates and starts bending, showing that no, he would not actually hurt Mob. As Mob tells him, "I knew I could trust you, Dimple." And naturally in this situation, Dimple asks him, "Why?" And Mob tells him, "You told me honestly how you felt about my shirt. You're you, Dimple." And honestly, like I said, Dimple's the only one that's upfront and honest with Mob all the time. Even when he was trying to manipulate him, which we'll get into in a bit, he's always been upfront and honest with Mob. Even if it's harsh and mean, he's kept it real with him. As Dimple says that, "You didn't like the way I do things, right? Are you sure you're just gonna let me be? I'm a dangerous evil spirit." But Mob looks at him and tells him, "You're not dangerous. I know that now. You just got carried away." But Dimple tells him that, "I have confidence backed up with hard work. Don't lump me in with people who are just getting carried away." But Mob tells him that, "I also got carried away, so I understand how you feel." He tells Dimple that, "I got so conceited, and I'm sorry about that." Dimple gets a little mad here and says, "You're not trying to win me over with some random persuasion, are you?" But Mob continues and tells him that back then, "I got so carried away and didn't listen to you. I should have listened properly back then. I was so focused on becoming popular that I overlooked the more important things. I'm sorry, Dimple. You're at a point where something you've always wanted was within reach, and you invited me to be a part of it. You could have achieved this by yourself, but you asked me to join you. That was the most important thing. You just wanted to do the things you always wanted, together with me. You trusted me before I trusted you. Thank you." And we can tell Dimple's getting a little bashful in this situation, but he's not persuaded just yet. But then Dimple thinks to himself that something didn't feel right. I had a vague feeling that something isn't right. I had so many followers and nothing could oppose me. I became the center of the world. I achieved that. Almost everything went as planned, and I became a god. But it wasn't fun at all. As he goes on to explain in this scene all the things that happened between him and Mob over the course of the series, how they never got along, and yes, there are times when it pisses me off. But when I know the only thing he wants is for the girl he likes to notice him, I felt that he was concealing the same emotion as I did. We want our existence to be acknowledged. Back then, I thought I could manipulate him. But besides that, I felt a certain tension in my heart beginning to relax. As he starts to realizing to himself that spending time with Mob caused him to lose sight of his goals. And Dimple's having a very hard time accepting that. As he says, I still have so many things I want to do, so many ambitions. As Mob tells him that, I'll listen properly about what you want to do as your friend. And it's here in this moment that he wins Dimple back. And it's a great scene. It's such an emotional scene. These two are finally connecting with each other. As Dimple says, I guess I don't really need this God and following thing. I never noticed at all this time, but I wanted a friend. Shigio, you really are amazing. As he tells Mob that I'm done, I'll erase their memory relating to the fake psycho helmet that I created as well. And it's here that Dimple just starts laughing, and they share a moment as he says, let's go home, shall we? And it's here that Mob actually falls over from exhaustion, but Dimple joins hands with him and throws him on his back and carries him out of there. It's really a great scene, honestly, it really is. And as they're walking, Dimple tells him that you always collapsed like this back when you first joined the Body Improvement Club. And then Mob asks him, like, are you always gonna look like that? Can I ask you not to come to my house while you look like that? To be fair, Dimple looks kind of wild right here. He looks like a bodybuilder right now. And Mob actually falls asleep on top of Dimple's back right here. And it's a nice little scene as Dimple's carrying him out, as he asks himself, like, what do I do now? But unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end, because when Dimple turns around, we see that the divine tree is there. And as Dimple looks upon Psycho Helmet, he thinks to himself, I'm not controlling the divine tree anymore. Who the heck are you? And it's here that he realizes that after absorbing Mai and the followers' thoughts, the divine tree develops sentience. It developed a sense of self as the Psycho Helmet, and was waiting vigilantly for me to let go of all this massive power of mine. And now the tree's ready to collect its energy again as it tells Dimple, put that thing down on your back. That's my nourishment. And as Dimple realizes that this is a really bad situation, the divine tree, aka Psycho Helmet, attacks him and actually separates Mob from him. Dimple, with his power, is able to get Mob back and actually put a barrier around him to keep him safe as he stares down the thousands of Psycho Helmets that are ready to pounce on him. And this fight is absolutely incredible as Dimple breaks out of the divine tree and has an unbelievably heated air battle with all of the Psycho Helmets. Dimple's putting up a hell of a fight, but he just starts getting bombarded by all these energy blasts from the Psycho Helmets. Thousands and thousands of them. As we just get an incredible scene, we get a Dragon Ball scene kind of, where Dimple is just screaming at the top of his lungs, ready to keep fighting, as we see the thousands and thousands of them just surrounding him. But it's here we transition to Dimple actually waking up Mob, as he says, you're awake. Can you move now? Mob tells him not yet. My eyes can't even see very well right now. But it's here that Dimple looks him straight in the eyes and says, Shigio, this is the first time I've ever used a power this big. You've been living all this time with this level of psychic powers. Now I can finally understand just how amazing you are. You're a real man. You're gonna be something big. And it's here that Dimple says, with how you are now, I can actually hypnotize you. Listen carefully. This is my first and last order to you. I don't care if your body is trembling. Stand up. Even if you can't stand, you have to stand up. I gotta go somewhere else for a bit, so you go on first. And as Mob walks away, we see the reality of the situation, of how Dimple is just beaten and bruised, missing body parts, and we see Psycho Helmet in the background. And it's here that I started to cry a little bit, guys, watching it, because I knew what was gonna happen. I knew what Dimple was doing in this moment, and it's a little emotional. And as Mob turns back to look, we just see Dimple waving at him as he says, "Take care." And we just hear their fierce fight in the background as Mob is walking out of there. As we transition to Dimple on the ground beaten, as he looks like gets absorbed into Psycho Helmet. But then we see his face shatter. And as Mob leaves the tree, he tells everyone, "Let's go home." And it's here we transition back to Mob's house as Ritsu actually comes in and says, "Hey, something big is happening on the news. Come check it out." As we see on the news that the divine tree is floating in the air and it looks like it's heading into space. As Ritsu tells Mob that my memories from around this evening are kind of fuzzy. As Mob realizes that mine are kind of fuzzy too. How did I even get home in the first place? As Ritsu says that I think Dimple would know more about this kind of mysterious thing. We should ask him the next time I see him. And it's here later that night as we transition to Mob. As he's trying to go to sleep, he says that I can't remember what happened. But Dimple, thank you. He knows that it was Dimple. He knows Dimple did something. As he says, "You're my friend, Dimple." And he cries himself to sleep and our episode ends right there. And this was a really emotional episode, honestly. I got really emotional. I think they did a really good job with this episode. Really, really just kind of hitting us where it hurts, man. I never knew I cared about Dimple so much until this season, but wow. I got emotional. I'll admit it. And this was a beautiful episode, but also an extremely sad one. Dimple might be gone forever, or he could come back later in the season. We don't know, to be fair, but this was a very heavy episode. A very heavy episode. And it was fantastic at the same time. So you guys let me know what you thought of this episode down below, because this is the best episode of this season, for sure. Not even a question. Of any series so far, this is by far the best episode of the season so far. Not even close. But if you disagree, let me know down below. But until next time, guys, I hope you have a great day, week, month, and year. And I can't wait for more Mob Psycho greatness. But until then, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you later. Deuces.